So a couple of years ago, the leadership team and I at Experience Life Church were reading some books about how the American church was dying, how the American church was in decline, and it really bothered me. In fact, the first book he read was called The Great Evangelical Recession. In other words, we call it the Great Evangelical Depression, because it really was depressing when you'd read about how the American church is dying in every measurable way. Churches were actually closing their doors. And so that book really bothered me. Then we began to read some books about church planting movements around the world where millions are coming to faith through discipleship, really through house churches. And my heart caught on fire. Like I knew that's exactly what I wanted to be a part of. And so I began to come up with an exit plan so that I could be a part of planting churches. Began to help train the first E-Lifers to go out and start house churches, and I knew that I wanted my family to do the same thing. The problem was I was still hired by Experience Life, and I knew I couldn't devote myself to two things, and honestly they became two very strategically different ways of doing ministry and making disciples. And although I knew Experience Life was going to make a huge shift to begin to cater to this new strategy, I just knew it was time for me to go and to start implementing that strategy immediately. So I told Chris, our lead pastor, that I think it was time that I leave. And I was planning on raising support. In other words, I was going to ask people to pay my salary so I could focus 100% of my time on church planting. And Chris really challenged me, and honestly I appreciate it. But he challenged me to consider getting a job, starting a new career, and planting churches on the side. See, he was basically saying that this can't work without lay people. This movement we want to see in West Texas can't take place without people with regular, ordinary jobs doing the exact same thing I'm wanting to do, to plant churches. And so he thought if I would have a secular job or an ordinary job, a new career, it would allow me to sympathize with lay people, to understand and identify with what they have to go through to plant churches, and to expand my circle of influence with people outside the walls of the church. And so I bought in. I completely agreed. The problem was I had no idea what I was going to do next. No idea. Well, one evening, a friend and I were driving to, and actually my wife was with us too. She was in the back seat. But I was talking to this friend of mine. We were driving to a Texas Tech football game, and I was telling him how I was really worried about what I was going to do. That I knew that I was coming to an end of my time at Experience Life, but I didn't know what career to pursue, and it scared me to death. We're walking up to the stadium, and as we're walking to the stadium, we notice this tailgate with a bunch of friends of ours that we both recognized. So we kind of veered off to the tailgate. We began having conversations with some of them. One of them was a realtor. And I went to go talk to her because I knew that she was very successful at what she did. I could see all of her posts and thought, she's done really well at that. Maybe that's something I could do. So as I began to have a conversation and explore that possibility with her, it's like I had clarity. It's like God answered my prayer and just took that huge weight on my shoulders and removed it where I felt light again. I felt this is exactly what I need to do. God answered my prayer. I know what I need to do now. And what's been really amazing about that is I've been in about a year as a realtor, and I'm telling you, it's been amazing. God has affirmed over and over and over and over again how faithful He really is. And I'm super grateful for that. So one of the cool things I wasn't expecting is the way this has really brought my family together. You may not realize this or even think about it, but as a pastor, it's pretty demanding. And where we're shepherding and pastoring so many people, church was never a place for my family. Now, it was awesome for my family, but it didn't bring my family closer together. What's awesome now is we do ministry together. If I'm going to go to the jail, I'm probably going to bring my son Boston with me to pray with people. If I'm going to go to the hospital, we're probably going to bring our daughter Presley. We're going to go pray door to door. My son Lincoln's going to come with me. If we're going to start a discovery group with our neighbors or with somebody that we've met, my whole family is going to be involved in that whole process. It really has been good for us, not to mention church as a whole. Church is something we do together. We started off separating the kids from the adults, and now they're included in what we do. But it's really rewarding too to see the way God is speaking and working in their life, and for them to watch us as we model our faith for them, and for them to experience firsthand what it means to be a godly parent and a godly husband or wife. So once I started the whole DMM training, I feel like my eyes were opened. It's like a veil was lifted, and every time I would read the scripture, I couldn't read it without seeing the importance of obedience. I was very focused on grace, and I could find that everywhere I looked in the scripture, but obedience is important to God. You know, we're told that those, who love God are going to be obedient to Him. I felt like what DMM principles have done and this whole house church movement we're trying to begin has done for me is it has really helped me to be intentional and strategic at obeying what God tells me to do and how He calls me to live. But seeing my family live out their faith has been truly encouraging because we realize it's up to us. We are the church. We can't rely on the church. We can't rely on the pastors or the leaders of it. We are the church, and that's what we're called to do, is to go out and to love people well. One of the things I decided to do at work was just to start a Bible study, and so I put flyers in everybody's mailbox and just said, hey, I want to start a Bible study, and you don't have to have any kind of spiritual background. In fact, the least you know, probably the better. This is a place where we're not going to show off what we know about the Bible. We're here to discover what the Bible has to say to each of us. One of the cool things that happened, there was some agents, they were eating at a restaurant, and they noticed the drive of the waitress that was there and thought it was very relational, good work ethic, and he just kind of cast vision, hey, have you considered real estate? I think you'd be good at it. Anyway, brings her in to meet with our coach. His name's Jason. Jason is talking to her about the real estate stuff, but also says we're a business that really believes that God is first, family second, and then it's our business. And so he began to cast vision for that and said, in fact, we have a guy that used to be a pastor that has started a Bible study here at our office, and it's awesome. And she said, that's what I want. See, she recently got out of jail. She really was craving a relationship with God, but she had to work on Sundays and didn't know how to make that happen. So one day, she wasn't that interested in real estate, to be honest with you, but she was very intrigued by the Bible study. So one day she comes in, she brings her cousin with her. They come into our business and they join us for our Bible study. It was awesome. I would love to help her grow in her relationship with Jesus, but not just her friends and family members in her neighborhood and others that are far from God that really want to be closer. And so I cast vision, instead of coming to my place, what if I come to your place? Do you mind if we read the Bible in your neighborhood with your friends and family? She said, sure. So we went, we started a Bible study at her house. I led it the first week, and then I cast vision for her to lead it the next week. I gave her an outline of these are the questions that you ask, here's some passages you can go by. And the next week, she led it. Week number 2, it was all her. She then began to invite some friends to come, and a lot of friends that have the background that she has, friends that I would never, ever be able to reach or influence, were coming and meeting in that living room to read the Bible with us. It was really powerful. So when I started real estate, I was scared to death. I was starting a new career and I didn't know if I would succeed. I didn't know what my first year would be like. Honestly, one of my hopes was I didn't have to sell my own house. I was hoping that we'd be able to stay in our house and continue to do ministry and love people and all of that, but I was kind of afraid that we weren't gonna be able to do well enough to do that. Fortunately, however, God has shown a lot of favor on my family, and I'm super grateful for it. He has provided for me in lots of different ways. I had a lot of early success my first year that really is, it's not common. And I recognize that has nothing to do with me, it has everything to do with God and His favor on my life. there is no explanation for the kind of success I've had this year other than God's faithfulness. We recently had an award ceremony, and there were a couple of awards that I received, but one of them means really a lot to me, called the Culture Award. And the Culture Award is an award that your peers vote on. And so all the agents in our brokerage, they vote on an agent they feel like exhibits the characteristics of our values as an organization. The values being God first, family second, business third. And so I was super humbled by that and honored, and recognizing that even though I'm not always seeing fruit in what I'm doing, that there's been more fruit than I realized. Another thing that I was asked to do is be a part of a magazine called Real Producers. And I was chosen to be the rising star in April's edition, which was a huge honor. What I'm excited about is it gave me an opportunity and a platform to introduce myself to even more people, to express how much I love God, how I got in the position I was in. In fact, one of the captions was "From Pastor to Realtor." And then the whole thing was about the gospel, about the church planting movement we're trying to start, about me wanting to make an impression on people's life. And it asked how I wanted to use this platform as the rising star. And I essentially said that money's fleeting, that life is like a vapor, that we can pursue materialistic things, or we can pursue to make our name greater. But in the end, that's not going to leave us fulfilled. The way we'll be the most fulfilled is by glorifying His name, making His name more famous. And I say all of that, not to really boast about myself. That's not me and my character, but honestly, I'm just grateful. Like, I'm just super grateful. I reflect on this past year and I just can't believe all of the favor that God has placed on my life. And I know it's because I stepped out in faith and I trusted Him when it would have been a lot easier for me just to ignore that calling and to do what I was doing and feel good about serving the church.